why did you create pain? I'm asking God, why did you create pain? Here's his answer. Because I love you. Because I love you. Now, I know you're thinking, I don't understand that. Okay. Pain is to help us or keep us from hurting ourselves more. That's what pain's for. Today, we have these sliding glass doors, and I was holding something, and I was kind of closing it like this, and I felt a little bit of pressure on my little finger. And I realized, oh, my finger's in there, so I pulled it out. It's just a little pressure, but I felt it, pulled it out, and then shut the sliding glass door. You know what that little pressure did? Kept me from hurting myself more. Because if I couldn't feel that, I'd just closed the door and probably broken the bone. See what I'm saying? So pain keeps you from hurting yourself more. Let me tell you who really did the breakthrough discovery on this. Dr. Paul Brand, he's from India, and he worked for 20 years in a leprosarium, a hospital that treats lepers or people who have Hansen's disease. For thousands of years, they believed that the bacteria that causes leprosy would eat away at the flesh. Thousands of years. They had lepers in Jesus' day, and they found skeletal remains from 2,000 years BC of people they say had leprosy and died from leprosy. And so they believed that the bacteria would eat away the flesh, but that's not what happens. What happens is the bacteria eats away the nerves so that you can't feel pain. And then these people, because they couldn't feel pain, were doing things and injuring themselves because they couldn't feel pain. There was a man that was working with a hoe, and his flesh was just being torn completely up, and they realized that there was a nail sticking out of the handle of the hoe, and every time he would do it, it was just cutting his hand, but he couldn't feel the pain. Dr. Brand one day was trying to open a padlock, a rusted padlock, with this key, and he couldn't get it open, and a little 12-year-old boy came by that had leprosy, and he said, "Here, Dr. Brand, let me do that." And he did it, he opened it, but Dr. Brand knew immediately what happened. He said, "Oh, let me look," and he turned his finger over, and he sliced it all the way to the bone because he couldn't feel the pain. So Dr. Brand's the one that discovered it's not bacteria eating away the flesh, it's them injuring themselves and the flesh then getting infected and the infection eating away the flesh. But there's another part to this, and this is kind of tough to tell you, but let me tell you, sometimes they would go, this is for years, lepers would lose their appendages, fingers and toes, and they thought it was the bacteria doing it, but it wasn't. It was the infection from them hurting themselves because they couldn't feel pain. But then there were times when they'd go to bed and they'd have that much of their finger missing, but they'd wake up and they'd have that much of their finger missing, more of their finger. And so this was in the 1970s, and they put cameras in the rooms. And I know this is gonna be tough to hear, but they discovered that rats were coming into the rooms and eating the appendages at night as the lepers slept. And the lepers, though, couldn't feel it. So they would go to bed with a quarter of their finger missing and wake up with half their finger missing. Dr. Brand's the one that discovered that. By the way, he was a Christian, and so he prayed and said, "God, what do we do? What do we do?" And God gave him the answer. And so every leper got a cat. God provided for rats with cats. Rats, cats, that's what cats are good for. Okay, never mind. But every leper got a cat that took care of the rats coming in the rooms tonight. So let me give you some more examples, all right? One of an NBA player that he hurt his ankle before the championship game. This was several years ago. And he wanted to play, so he had the doctors put painkillers in his ankle, and he went out to play the championship game. He came down on his ankle the wrong way. It broke a bone in it, but because he couldn't feel the pain, he kept playing. He ran up and down the court 2 more times and then broke his ankle so bad that the injury was permanent and he could never walk straight again, and he couldn't play for the rest of his life basketball because he couldn't feel the pain. See, the pain was telling him something was wrong. By the way, Dr. Brand invented gloves for the lepers to try to give them feeling or somehow let them know when they were hurting themselves, holding something too tightly or cutting themselves. And at first it would make a noise, but they would just keep working through the noise. So then he had it hooked up where it would shock the back of their neck. That's the last place they would lose feeling. So it would send an electrical shock to the back of their neck, and then the lepers would just turn it off. So he fixed it where they couldn't turn it off, and then they would just unplug it. And this is what Dr. Brand's conclusion was. He said, I fear that our society does the same thing, that something happens and we use medicine to turn the pain off instead of asking our bodies, why do I have this pain? I remember after reading this book and learning about this, I remember a few weeks later I got a headache and I went to get some Tylenol and I thought, wait, what's my body trying to tell me? And I thought, I didn't sleep very well last night. So instead of taking Tylenol, I went and took a nap, middle of the day, woke up, no headache. It's just amazing when we start listening to our bodies. I just want to say one more thing about the lepers, because we're talking about why did God create pain. Dr. Brand also discovered that the suicide rate was astronomically high among lepers compared to the rest of society. And here's the reason why, as he began to interview them psychologically to find out, because they couldn't feel pain, they couldn't feel pleasure. They couldn't feel if someone hugged them, and they couldn't feel if someone gave them a pat on the back. The same nerves that allowed them to feel pain allowed them to feel pleasure. See, God designed our body, and he knew what he was doing.